In 1882, Camila Hargrave stepped down from a stagecoach in the frontier town of Dead Horse Creek with a small bag, a pistol hidden in her boot, and an unsigned letter. Road dust coated her once ivory dress, but her eyes were anything but dulled. There was fire in them. Her husband, Henry, had been shot dead a month earlier. People said the Apache were responsible. Camila didn't believe it. When his body vanished, along with the land deeds and mining rights, she knew something was being covered up. The letter that arrived contained only 6 scrawled words. Your husband was killed for silver. No explanation, no sender's name, but it was enough to bring her here. The townsfolk watched her like an omen. A woman alone on the frontier was usually a tragedy or trouble, and Camila was both. The sheriff denied ever knowing Henry, but his evasive eyes and the looks coming from the saloon across the way told her the truth had been buried. That night, beneath the flickering glow of an oil lamp in the boarding house, Camila unfolded the letter again. Along the edge of the paper was a faint line, almost invisible. Find the man with the green beads. She didn't sleep, not out of fear, but because the hunt had begun. The next morning, Camila followed the only lead she had, the faint line in the letter. Find the man with the green beads. Behind the stables, she found a man sprawled in the dirt, the sharp smell of liquor hanging around him. What caught her eye wasn't his drunken state, but the necklace around his neck weathered blue beads worn smooth by time. She knelt and shook him awake. Dark eyes opened, sharper than his appearance suggested. His name was Talon. Without beating around the bush, Camila asked if he had written the letter. Talon didn't deny it. He warned her to leave town if she wanted to stay alive. But Camila hadn't come to run. Talon revealed the truth. Henry had bought a piece of land that lay within an old Navajo hunting ground and discovered a silver vein beneath it. That discovery made him a target. In Dead Horse Creek, silver didn't just bring wealth, it brought blood. The people behind it weren't native raiders, as the rumors claimed, but men who pulled the town's strings from the shadows. The banker, the sheriff, and one name that stood above the rest, Elias Cade. Talon knew where Henry had been taken. He even knew who had pulled the trigger. Camila met his gaze without hesitation. Then take me there. The search for the truth had officially begun. Camila and Talon left Dead Horse Creek before the sun reached its peak, riding toward the barren hills that had once been Navajo hunting grounds. After hours in the saddle, they stopped at a desolate canyon, where the skeletal remains of an abandoned silver mine stood alone like a scar carved into the land. In a low voice, Talon said this was where Henry had come to stake his mining claim, and where he had been watched. Among the sand and shattered stone, Talon brushed away debris to reveal an iron stake, still stained with dried blood. This was where Henry had been pinned to the ground and shot. No burial rites, no prayers, only wind and vultures. Camila knelt, her hand trembling slightly as it touched the old blood. The anger rising in her was no longer a dull ache, it hardened into certainty. This hadn't been a random robbery, it was a deliberate execution. Talon finally spoke the name behind it all. Elias Cade, the banker and land baron who controlled the town from the shadows. On paper, the silver mine belonged to no one. In reality, Cade owned it through fear and blood-stained hands. Henry had found the silver before Cade could claim it, and that discovery had sealed his death sentence. Camila stood, her eyes no longer wet with grief but cold as steel. The truth had been unearthed. Now it was time for the man who buried it to pay. Under the blazing midday sun, Camila and Talon rode straight into Dead Horse Creek like a declaration of war. No more sneaking around, no more quiet questions. She had come to force the truth into the open. Sheriff Maddox stepped out of his office, one hand already resting on his gun. He pretended to be calm, but the caution in his eyes gave him away. Camila didn't waste words. She demanded that he tell her everything about her husband's death. Before he could answer, Elias Cade emerged from the saloon black vest neatly pressed, a cold smile on his face. He neither denied nor confessed. He simply said Henry had bought the wrong land, and that the frontier isn't for the soft-hearted. The words landed like a slap. Cade believed this town belonged to him, its law, its bank, its church, even the silence of its people. He warned Camila that she would disappear, just like the other widows who had come here seeking justice. But this time, he had miscalculated. Camila met his gaze and made herself clear. She would not stop until the entire town knew the truth. In that moment, the lines were drawn. There would be no more investigation. This was a battle between power and justice. If you were Camila, would you choose to gather evidence quietly or confront them head-on like this? Leave a comment below and share your choice. As Camila and Talon walked away from the tense confrontation with Cade, the entire town fell into suffocating silence. No one spoke. No one dared meet their eyes. Then, from a dark alley, a trembling voice called out, "Do you want to know where they buried the bodies?" A skinny boy stepped into the light. His name was Isaac. His father had worked at the mine until Cade's men killed him and tossed him into a canyon like trash. Isaac had seen with his own eyes what happened to Henry. He said there wasn't just one body. Many people had disappeared the same way, and he knew where they were buried, a narrow ravine few ever visited, where the sand still bore signs of being disturbed at night. Camila knelt in front of Isaac. In his eyes, there was no longer a child's fear, but the hardened look of someone who had lost too much. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. Isaac shook his head. "I'm more afraid of living like this." Talon looked at Camila. She didn't need to speak, he understood. Tonight, they would dig up the past. Not to reopen old wounds, but to expose the crimes buried beneath them. Night fell, and the desert seemed to hold its breath as Camila, Talon, and Isaac moved into the ravine. Silver moonlight washed over the barren ground, where the sand still showed signs of being hastily disturbed. They began to dig. The earth was hard, almost defiant, but Camila didn't stop. Her hands bled, her dress was coated in dust, yet every strike of the shovel carried an unshakable resolve. Then a scrap of old fabric appeared. After that, a decayed hand. They found Henry. His wedding ring was still on his finger, undeniable proof. But that wasn't all. Beside his body were signs of several other shallow graves. Henry was not the only one who had been erased. Trembling, Isaac pulled out a scorched piece of paper he had managed to steal from the sheriff's office. It was a land transfer deed, bearing Henry's forged signature, dated after his death. Elias Cade's seal was stamped clearly at the bottom. The conspiracy had been written in ink and hidden with blood. Camila clenched the paper in her fist. Now she had more than grief. She had evidence. But before they could leave, the sound of hoofbeats echoed from the hillside. The killers knew the grave had been uncovered. The sound of hooves tore through the still night. 4 figures appeared along the ridge, faces covered, guns already raised. There was no doubt now Cade knew they had unearthed the truth. The first shot flashed in the darkness, the bullet sparking off rock inches from Talon's head. He returned fire immediately, calm and precise. One man was thrown from his saddle before he even understood what was happening. Camila dragged Isaac behind a large boulder and raised her gun. This time, her hands didn't shake. Her shot slammed into another rider's thigh, sending him screaming as he tumbled into the brush. The remaining 2 charged downhill, knives and pistols drawn, intent on ending it quickly. Talon met one head-on, blade flashing, his movements sharp and economical like a seasoned warrior. Camila waited for the right moment. When the last attacker lunged, she twisted aside, smashed the gun butt into his temple, then pulled the trigger at point-blank range. Silence returned. Only the wind remained, carrying the sharp scent of gunpowder across the desert. Isaac stepped out, his face pale. "They'll come back," he whispered. Camila looked at the bodies scattered at the base of the hill, her eyes colder than ever. "No," she said. "This time we go back." When Camila and Talon laid Henry to rest with proper rites beside Black Hollow Creek, they knew Cade wouldn't let it go. What they didn't expect was how brutal his answer would be. The following night, the town burned. The church, the last fragile symbol of hope, was set ablaze. Its wooden roof collapsed amid screams and crackling fire. The pastor's wife sat shaking in the ashes, telling them that Cade's men had called it a warning. Anyone who helped Camila dig up the past would share the same fate. This wasn't just the burning of a building. It was the burning of faith. Doors were bolted shut. Curtains were drawn tight. No one dared look at Camila. No one dared speak. Fear had sunk deeper than the truth ever had. Talon recognized the tactic immediately. Isolate the target. Turn them into the cause of every disaster. If the town turned its back on Camila, Cade would win without firing another shot. But standing in the ash-choked street, Camila didn't bow her head. She looked toward the sheriff's office, where Cade still ruled like a king without a crown. "He wants a war," she said quietly. "Then we'll show him what justice looks like." This time, she wasn't fighting only for her husband. She was fighting for an entire town being silenced by fire. Camila walked straight to the sheriff's office before night had fully fallen. Cade stood on the porch, flanked by two enforcers, his expression still arrogant, as if the fire from the night before had been nothing more than a joke. She didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She presented the evidence, the exhumed bodies, the forged land transfers, the ledgers detailing bribes and stolen property. Isaac stood behind her, gripping the fake letter Cade had prepared to stage Henry's suicide. "The photos end her." Cade laughed. He was certain no one in town had the courage to stand with her. Then he drew his gun. But Camila was faster. The shot rang out across the street. The bullet tore into Cade's shoulder, dropping him to his knees on the steps. His two men barely had time to react before Talon disarmed them. For the first time, the man who had controlled the town from the shadows was forced to kneel in the dust. "You can't burn everything away," Camila said coldly. "The truth doesn't burn. The great has ceased for." That very night, they took Cade and all the evidence to the federal court in Silver Point. Blood-stained ledgers, forged signatures, and lists of bribes became irrefutable proof. This time, Camila's bullet didn't just strike one man. It pierced the entire rotten system Cade had built. In the days that followed, Dead Horse Creek was no longer a town strangled by fear. Arrest warrants were carried out. Cade and his accomplices were brought to trial one by one. Power built on corruption, and blood finally collapsed. Camila didn't stay to hear the praise. She returned to Black Hollow Ranch, the land that had once been the cause of her tragedy, now rightfully restored. The old house leaked, the stable leaned, the fences were rotting and broken, but the sky was wide, and the freedom there was something no one could ever take from her again. Talon stayed to help her mend the roof and rebuild the ranch. Isaac found a new home as well. Black Hollow was no longer a place of pain, it became a beginning. One evening, as the red sun sank behind the mountains, Talon asked if she wanted to sell everything and go back east to start over. Camila gently shook her head. "I'm no longer the woman who left in grief," she said. "I'm the one who rebuilds from the ashes." She had come here for revenge, but she stayed by choice, by choosing life. What do you think? Should Camila leave to start anew somewhere else, or stay and build her future on the very land once stained with blood? Leave a comment and share your thoughts.